So here's a strange one. 1979 Lincoln cents. I've had like 4 people just in the last 2 weeks asking me what is the value of a 1979 Lincoln cent. So we're going to talk about it. Kind of like a catch-all kind of video. We're going to talk about some of the highest known prices of these coins. Of course, they're going to be graded. Would you believe that one of them actually sold for over $7,000? Yeah, we're going to talk about what it takes to get there. But we're also going to look at everything else. Mint errors. Do they exist on these coins? How much are just the regular coins as you find them in circulation? The good news is that these are actual copper Lincoln cents. So, you would figure at the very least they're going to be worth, a few cents a piece above and beyond the normal face value. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the basic stuff with these coins. So there's 3 different releases, all in 1979. Okay, so the Philadelphia Mint had produced a buttload of these coins. As a matter of fact, here's the staggering statistic mintage number for the 1979 Philadelphia crafted coins. 6,018,515,000 was the total number of 1979 Lincoln cents made at the Philadelphia Mint. Okay, the thing about these coins is that they were all generally very well struck. Herein lies the problem, and probably kind of the reason why that there were a few examples that sold for like $5,000, $7,000 is going to be the planchet quality. The planchet is an unstruck blank of sorts. They were pretty well nicked up as sourced or supplied either by the mint, made in-house, or they were obtained secondhand through a third-party vendor. And they were not very good. To give you a general idea, look at the coin on screen here. This one in a graded holder. This is, believe it or not, one of the finest known graded 1979 Philly Lincoln cents. But if you look at the bottom here, you see right here at the truncation of Lincoln's bust, you see all these little ticks and little marks and little what appear to be hits. That is the originating surface of the planchet. Just because a coin is struck does not completely obliterate what the original, quality of the blank or planchet was. And this is a testament to that. However, finding some coins that'll grade at such a supreme specimen where it'll be worth selling to collectors for many thousands of dollars will be a challenge. However, all is not for nothing. You're going to know exactly what it's going to take. And, in a way, spoiler alert, I'm going to kind of give you, the secret stash conversation of where you can find some of these coins at the highest grade level. So that way it'll help you prepare to grade if you wanted to. Again, not financial advice. So that's the 1979 Philly. All right, so they also produced, for circulating coinage, a Denver variant of that same coin. The only difference being that the mint put a Denver mint mark. It's going to be a small letter D underneath the date. Now, this is kind of like the norm. This is the traditional mint mark placement on Lincoln cents. It's been like that all the way since the beginning in 1909, underneath the date. If you find it anywhere else, it might be something funny about that coin. Maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way. I don't know. But in this particular instance at the Denver Mint, they didn't hold back on the mintage. The number, another staggering statistic, however, quite a bit less, in contrast to the Philadelphia minted coins, 4,139,357,254 to the number is the amount that the Denver Mint had produced for this particular coin. Now, in much the same light, the Philadelphia coins had its issues. So did the Denver Mint. As it turns out, the blanks were all sourced from the same place, either in-house or from the same third-party provider that they were using even still today. Now, obviously, that third-party contracted vendor has changed over the years, but the premise is still the same. I want to order X amount of planchets, so that way the mint can produce X amount of coins, but they all kind of like source from somewhere other than inside the mint. So, yeah, I mean, those are the two mainline coins. Now, I did happen to mention that there was a third coin that was produced in 1979, and it is actually the San Francisco minted proof coins. Now, those particular ones are included in proof sets, which were made and intended for the collector base. They were purchased directly from the mint. If you were a fly on the wall, you had sent in or called the mint to order these back in the day. In the 70s and 80s, called the mint. I want to order a few of these proof sets. And they take your credit card right over the phone. Now, those particular coins were in such high quality to begin with that, they were going to grade very high anyways. Now, the saga continues, okay? Where these coins are going to be worth the most amount of money is going to be in really the grading aspect of things. If we were going to take a look at every single date of coin that was ever made to man, believe it or not, all the coins have an innate amount of collector value above and beyond what the face value is. Where the conversation kind of ends is going to be grading. Grading is such a progressive, very popular kind of activity today to enhance the value of a lot of these coins. And not to mention, there is this thing called registry set collecting and building that are essentially for the rich and famous. I'm not one of them. And that's where, kind of those big dollar auction values come into play here. Take, for instance, this 1979. It should look very familiar. It's the same coin that I just showed you guys a few moments ago, but this is like the full slab version here with the picture. Mid-State 68 red. Now, for Philadelphia coins, okay, I want to let you guys know that this is not the finest grade for a Philly minted 79. As a matter of fact, there is a Mid-State 68 plus. Consider the plus maybe a half a point grade higher, okay? So 68.5, I guess, is what you could say that grade is with a plus symbol on there. This one does not have it. There is only one known example in a 68 plus that was ever graded by PCGS. PCGS being the grading company. In Mid-State 68, the population goes up to 18. There are 18 examples graded in a 68 red. Now, this particular coin right here, sold by Great Collections back in 2022. There's a date. As a matter of fact, it's like 3 years ago, almost to the day, because it was on September 25th. $5,456.25. Now, that's with the buyer's fee. So, I've been asked also, is the real price actually the winning bid price? Or is it the price with the buyer's fee added in? And that's why these auction houses, they show both values for the most part. Great Collections does a really great job at this. But kind of crazy to think that this 1979 Lincoln cent, in which over 6 billion of them were made, there's this one lone example that's sold here on Great Collections for nearly $5,500. Kind of crazy. Here is the Denver variant. As again, it should look familiar because it's the same coin we looked at a second ago when I had it superimposed for quality. This one right here in a Mid-State 68 red. It's kind of strange because today, when it comes to quality, who produces the best quality coins? Is it the Philadelphia Mint or the Denver Mint? The Philadelphia Mint produces coins for folks on the eastern half of the United States, whereas the Denver Mint produces coins for the western half. Did I get that right? The Philadelphia, eastern half. Denver Mint, the western half. California, that's where I'm at. I see a lot of Denver minted coins all the time. So the quality generally is much better at the Denver Mint, and it's been like that for years. However, this is kind of like a 180-degree change here. Back in the 70s, the Philadelphia coins were actually a little bit better, just slightly better. And because of that, that skews today's, I guess, population numbers at the grading companies. For example, 1970-90, there is one lone example in a 68 red. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? You are staring at it on the screen at this very moment. This is the finest known singular example of this coin. So, in hindsight, because it is unique, it's a rarity, it should be worth more money. And certainly it is. As a matter of fact, Great Collection sold this one back in 2020, 5 years ago, $8,044.88 with what we call the juice. That's the buyer's fee. So a considerably much more higher priced coin in a Denver minted fashion here than the Philadelphia coin. And guess what? It is still a Pop 1 today. That means within the last 5 years, since the sale of this one on Great Collections, there have been no others that have graded in a 68 red. Kind of interesting. Whereas the Philadelphia, there's so many more in Mid-State 68. As a matter of fact, there's 17 more compared to this one, not to mention that there's that one that's graded as 68 plus or 68.5. I guess so. Sure, we'll go with that. So that, ladies and gents, is what the value of these coins are graded at the highest level. Okay, but this is not the whole story. You got to know how much these coins are in different variances, mid-errors. How much are the coins worth if they're not the top grade, right? You guys need to know this. So here's a few of some of the most highest priced realized examples of graded errors, okay? And by the way, they don't all have to be graded. These are all stunning, very impressive, worth lots of money, and also another way of kind of like monetizing on 1979 Lincoln cents. Here's this example right here. This thing is a stunner. This one graded by NGC. As you can tell, it says obverse die cap. This was the actual coin, guys, that was stuck to the die. All right, while it was striking a bunch of coins, this 1 penny was stuck to the die, and it was never dislodged, or it never fell out, which means that it was striking up other coins with a coin stuck to that die. All right, and there's the reverse. That's what the reverse looks like after so many strikes, right? It's been reported that maybe about after 25 to 50 strikes, the reverse of the thing will begin to kind of weaken in design, all right? And it will stop producing some pretty amazing, host coins. As a matter of fact, these things get very thin, like razor paper thin, and they begin to wrinkle and crinkle up. And they're not nearly as impressive, but you can see kind of like the die state progression as these things continue to strike up other coins. So this one right here is selling on Great Collections, $352.12 back in 2022. Okay, very impressive. Here's another mint error that maybe you guys aren't aware exists out there in the world today, and that are Lincoln cents that were struck inadvertently on clad dime planchets. Okay, originally intended for Roosevelt dimes. They are copper and nickel. They're clad like a sandwich of layers, and these are quite rare. But you could possibly come across them, in change or roll hunting. Another way, which I'll tell you here in a few minutes, will be another way of finding these and sourcing them, okay? And that's going to be in brilliant uncirculated bankrolls. Yes, they still do exist, even 46 years later after the fact. You can even buy them online. They're not too terribly expensive either, but this one right here, as you can tell, not looking like copper at all. As a matter of fact, it looks like nickel. And this one graded by PCGS. This one, by the way, is selling on Great Collections for $594. Forever and a day ago, 11 years ago. And that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how rare this is if the last reported sale, especially through Great Collections, was over a decade ago. Kind of interesting there. We also have this one here. This is actually a Lincoln cent that was struck through a fragment or a capped die. This is what it begins to look like as that die cap crinkles up, becomes razor thin, kind of like begins to fall apart at this point, and it strikes through onto the coin. Then you have something that looks like this. This is a huge sale for something like this at $1,200, but boy, is it impressive. The reverse will always be very well struck. This one popped right out of circulation because they only managed to grade AU55, which is quite miraculous considering that, as the grade of coins begins to diminish, from like finest, minty, fresh examples down into circulating grades, you would think that the coins would be worth a little bit less. But this one right here, much more of an anomaly than anything else, because it sold for $1,200 back in 2021. And I'm telling you, a lot of these sales are kind of coming out within the last 5 years. It's crazy how much this market has evolved just in the last half decade. All right, but we still got more. Here's yet again another prime time example here. This is actually a Jefferson nickel that was struck on an already produced 1979 Lincoln cent. Again, for the visual masses out here that like, impressive looking mint errors, this is one of them here. Now, this is something that you can find in a BU roll. It's been found before, like this one here. This one even graded Mid-State 64 red by PCGS. They affectionately call these double denominations. All right, this one is a nickel on penny. There's also cent on dime and a few others too. They're quite impressive. This one's selling 16 years ago. As a matter of fact, that was the recession. $1,610. That coin's probably worth a whole heck of a lot more today with the rate of inflation. And yes, there is inflation just in the last 16 years. Kind of crazy to think. This one might even be worth like $2,500 today. Here's another impressive one here. They call this one double struck, both sides off center. Okay, reverse scratched. So it's not a perfect coin, but nonetheless, it is incredibly stunning. There's your couple scratches there. Don't know how those come out. You can even see some of the original oxide black grease that's in the devices. There was a lot of things going on at that mid-press during the time when this thing was produced. It was quite a sight to behold, that's for sure. But anyways, this one graded by NGC, okay, as a details coin because it has the scratches on there. Double struck, both sides, or both strikes off center, $2,160, just 4 years ago. Again, pretty nice, relatively modern sale. And then one of the most extreme 1979 Lincoln cent errors has to be this one, where another double denomination, a Susan B. Anthony dollar, struck over an already produced 1979 Lincoln cent. How about rare? Is what this will be. $9,400 is what the sale price on this one is. And that was back in 2016, 9 years ago. So again, the price might be probably over $10,000 in today's kind of like market landscape. This one, a very impressive coin. When I saw this one, I had to talk about it. Okay. One last thing before I let you guys go. Okay, we've talked about a bunch of like very expensive coins, but let's be realistic here. The coins that we find out in circulation, okay, they all have a certain degree of price or value. What I can tell you is that, believe it or not, these coins have more value above and beyond face value because they're copper. Copper has been slowly rising, with precious metals these days. So, it's not unusual to see copper Lincoln cents be 2 to 3 cents. People are selling them online for that. But here is on eBay some of the most realized sales of just regular coins. Maybe there's proof coins, maybe there's graded coins, but you're going to see kind of like the scope of like what normal folks like you and I would normally come across when it comes to 1979 Lincoln cents. Now, obviously, there's the proof coins. We know those at a certain extent have value. Here are some BU rolls. BU rolls are going to be those things that you crack open to look for the finest graded or gradable specimens that you could send off to NGC or PCGS in the hopes that you could score a Mid-State 68, right? Because that's what we want. We want to be able to cash in a huge way on these. But you could get rolls, depending on what you're looking at, for between $5 and $15. Still somewhat relatively reasonable, but people are selling individual coins for a few bucks. This one here with shipping turns out to be over $9. A couple bucks here and there. You can find these in mint sets if you're looking for nice examples to put in an album, So gem minty red examples will command a buck or two, So they're not completely useless when it comes to collectability. As a matter of fact, people love collecting Lincoln cents. The real question is, how are these going to do once the Lincoln cent production stops? Okay, there's rumors that 2026 is the final year of Lincoln cent production. That more than likely will have some sort of domino effect on all the other coins. Of course, the better, nicer graded specimens will have much more of an impact. But are we going to see like huge strides here? Probably not. We're not going to be talking about many thousands of dollars in difference. A coin that maybe had sold for $1 to $2 might be $3 to $4. We're not going to see huge strides here. But if you guys want an idea of what raw, ungraded coins go for, they have to be in gem nice condition in order to collect your $1 to $2 a piece. Because outside of that, you're not going to get a ton more money. BU rolls definitely the way to go for that extra fun factor, because those bank wrap rolls, you might find mid errors in there. You might find that next mid state 68 or 68 plus in there. That's where a lot of those coins are sourced from. They're never really sourced direct from circulation to a graded holder. They're just rare because old copper nice Lincoln sets, they turn brown really quickly. And if you hold on to them wrong and you're holding them wrong, they're going to look even worse. Because guess what? Fingerprints show up really well on a fresh, red, uncirculated 1979 Lincoln cent, and is the most abysmal looking thing that you will ever see. So if you do have these, keep in mind that circulated coins, unfortunately, they're not worth more than maybe a cent or two. There is always that face value, so you have something to fall back on. But some of the nicer examples, will command a couple bucks. And then if you are a hardcore numismatist and you want to send these off for grading for the highest grade, good news. They have a lot of value. So if, with all that hard work, if you're able to find some primo examples, I got great news. You will be rewarded handsomely if you're able to catch a lightning in a bottle. Again, it's very rare to get those top pop grades. It's a very, very selective, kind of very difficult thing to just, knock it out of the park, with that top grade. It's going to take some wildly discerning grading habits, of you guys. And you gotta look for perfection. If it's anything less than that, you're not gonna have anything great. So there you go, 1979 Lincoln cents. Okay, for the four of you that were asking, this is what they're worth. No, you're not gonna become a millionaire with 1979 Lincoln cents, but good news, there's a lot to look for here. And I wish you guys the best in all of your hunting endeavors. I'm your host, Sean, with Blue Ridge Silverhound. Don't forget to hit the like button, share the video if you'd want, hit that subscribe button. We're looking for more subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all of your support and views. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one, and keep on collecting, my friends.